New York City, 2 o'clock in the morning. From high above, the skyscrapers glow like islands of light in a sea of darkness. The streets look quiet, almost asleep. But up in the night sky, something is still wide awake. A commercial airliner glides over Manhattan, a silver shadow against the clouds. Inside the cabin, the lights are warm and soft. Passengers sleep, headphones on, heads resting on the backs of their seats. They trust the navigation systems, the computers, the satellites circling far above them. For them, this is just another overnight flight home. They have no idea how close they are to never arriving. Miles away, in a dark radar control room, green dots drift calmly across glowing screens. Then one dot twitches. A straight line bends. A flight path begins to drift. 1 degree, 2 degrees, 3. The plane is no longer headed safely across the map. It's slowly turning toward Midtown, toward a forest of glass and steel. Warning lights start to flash. Lines of code pour down a monitor as satellites flicker on and off, like someone is snapping their finger at the sky. A senior official is called in. He steps into the glow of the screens, eyes scanning the impossible data. This is no glitch. Someone has reached into the heart of America's satellite network and taken control, even if only for 30 seconds. In his office upstairs, he opens a classified file on his computer. A name appears, Kane Rourke. Status, deceased. The cursor moves, 1 click. The word deceased vanishes from the screen. On the phone, the old man's voice is calm, but his words are not. If he can do it for 30 seconds, he can do it for 30 minutes. And when that happens, the entire United States goes dark. Far above the sleeping cities, the satellites keep circling, silent and indifferent. Across the river, in a cramped Brooklyn apartment, a cheap alarm clock buzzes in the dark. Paint peels from the walls. A small desk is buried under old case files, empty pill bottles and cold coffee cups. There are no family photos, no framed certificates, only a picture frame turned face down and a worn military ID card with the name almost rubbed away. This is Kane Rourke. On paper, he died 3 years ago. In reality, he wakes up every day, swallows a couple of pills, and tries to forget the parts of his life that still refuse to die. Tonight, rain streaks the windows of an old sedan parked on a narrow Brooklyn street. Kane sits behind the wheel, camera resting in his hands, lens pointed at a small neighborhood bar. Through the glass, he can see his target. A married man wrapped around a younger woman, laughing too loudly, touching her like he's never heard the word vows. He takes a few photos, each flashless click another piece of proof for a client who already knows the truth. This isn't hero work. It's not even real detective work. It's just how a dead man pays his rent. But something about tonight is different. In his rearview mirror, Kane notices a black SUV parked behind him. No headlights, tinted windows, no license plates. It's been there longer than it should. His old instincts whisper in the back of his mind, "You're not the hunter tonight, you're the prey." Before he can react, his car door yanks open. A man's silhouette fills the frame, rain dripping from a dark coat. No gun is needed, just a low, steady voice. Kane Rourke. Dead men shouldn't be sitting out here taking pictures. Kane understands immediately. This isn't the jealous husband. This is someone who knows things he shouldn't. Minutes later, the black SUV rolls across the Brooklyn Bridge, city lights of Manhattan burning ahead like 1,000 watching eyes. The SUV slips into a private underground garage beneath a glass tower. A steel door closes behind them with a heavy echo. From there, he is led into an elevator with only one button, down. The doors open onto a sterile white hallway, brightly lit, lined with cameras and security panels. At the end of it, a reinforced door scans an eye and slides open. Beyond, a minimalist office, one desk, a few monitors, and a wall of glass overlooking New York at night. This is not a place for ordinary people. This is where secrets live. A woman stands with her back to the window, city lights reflecting off her dark suit. Helen Ward, director of Aegis Division, the one who signed the papers that declared Kane Rourke dead. She doesn't need to turn around to know he's there. On the desk in front of her, a tablet shows radar logs and a jagged red line tracing a plane that nearly hit a building. Next to it lies a small USB drive. She explains, in a calm, measured tone, someone hijacked America's satellites for 30 seconds. Then she says a name Kane hasn't heard aloud in a long time. Jenna Cross, teammate, the person who mattered most to him and who died in the same operation that was supposed to kill him. Helen tells him Jenna died tonight, in what the world will call a simple car accident on a bridge. But before she died, Jenna sent one last message, hidden inside that USB. The drive sits between them, small and harmless, like a bullet that hasn't been fired yet. Kane doesn't answer. He just reaches out, closes his fingers around the USB, and holds it tight. In that moment, the man the world believes is dead quietly comes back to life.
In Helen Ward's office, the city glows behind the glass like a silent audience. On the tablet in front of Kane, the radar logs disappear, replaced by a simple audio file with the familiar name, Jenna Cross. Helen presses play. Jenna's voice fills the room, shaky, breathing hard, like she's driving too fast and talking against time. Jenna says she's found something buried inside the satellite control network, something that shouldn't be there. She mentions 3 words that make Kane's blood run cold: Aegis Protocol override. Her voice cracks as she says, if they can hijack it once, they can do it again. And next time, it won't be a warning. The recording ends in a sudden jolt of noise, tires screeching, and then nothing but dead static. Helen tells Kane the official story. Helen's car hit the railing on a bridge and went under. No witnesses, no suspicious evidence. Case closed. But Kane has seen too many accidents in his life to believe in coincidences like this. Within the hour, he's standing at the edge of that same bridge, watching the river swirl black beneath the streetlights. The guardrails are twisted, scraped clean by impact. The skid marks on the asphalt don't match the angle of the crash. To Kane, it feels less like a careless swerve and more like a car that stopped responding to the person behind the wheel. From the impound lot, he convinces a contact to let him examine what's left of Jenna's vehicle. Buried in the torn fabric under the driver's seatbelt, he finds a tiny second USB drive, taped where no one official would bother to look. On it, a fragment of code identical to the one from the satellite hijack, and a set of coordinates pointing to a single building in Manhattan. The coordinates lead Kane straight into the heart of the financial district. In daylight, the building looks like any other monument to money and power. A tall glass tower with a polished logo near the entrance. Orion Dynamics. To the public, it's a technology and finance giant. To Kane, it suddenly looks a lot like the center of someone's storm. He doesn't walk in through the front doors as himself. Instead, he comes back in a gray maintenance uniform, an ID badge he shouldn't have, and a toolbox filled with more than just tools. Inside, the lobby is a cathedral of glass and metal, busy but orderly. Office workers line up at turnstiles. Security guards watch everyone, but no one watches the man in coveralls pushing a toolbox on wheels. As he moves deeper into the building, Kane's eye for patterns kicks in. Standard security on the upper floors, cameras, key cards, board guards glancing at phones. But on the digital directory, one level stands out. An unlabeled basement tier, listed only as Systems Infrastructure, with restricted access markers all over it. For a company that supposedly just crunches numbers, their basement looks an awful lot like a bunker. He slips through a service door into the back corridors, the spine of the building where visitors don't go.
Exposed pipes, concrete walls, and occasional doors marked with codes only employees understand. He follows the signs for electrical and network access, descending a short stairwell until the air turns cooler and the lights harsher. Down here, away from the polished lobby, Orion Dynamics feels less like an office and more like a covert facility. At the end of a long corridor, he stops just short of a reinforced security door with a biometric panel. He's not getting through that, at least not today. But nearby, he finds a smaller secondary server room behind a simple keycard lock. Inside, the hum of machines is constant, a mechanical heartbeat. Kane connects Jenna's hidden USB to an open port and pulls a portion of Orion's internal routing logs. The data he copies is enough to make one thing clear. A hidden pipeline links this building's basement directly into the same network used by the hijacked satellites. To anyone looking in a hurry, it would seem Orion is the architect of the attack. To the person who set this up, that's exactly the point. As Kane yanks the drive free and steps back into the hallway, an alarm suddenly screams to life. Somewhere in the building, security has noticed an unauthorized access. And once again, Kane Rourke has only seconds before the hunters find him.
The alarm screams through the basement like a living thing. Red lights strobe along the ceiling as Kane steps out of the server room, the USB still warm in his hand. He doesn't need anyone to tell him what comes next. He's been on the wrong end of alarms like this before. He moves fast, back through the concrete corridors, toolbox abandoned, coverall suddenly feeling like a costume that's overstayed its welcome. Shouts echo in the distance, security teams splitting up, radios crackling, doors slamming shut. Kane cuts down a side stairwell, taking the steps 2 at a time, aiming for any exit that doesn't have a camera pointed at it. He bursts out a heavy metal door into the back of the building, a service alley choked with dumpsters, steam vents, and the sour smell of the city. For a moment, there's silence, just his breathing, the hum of the city beyond. Then he hears it, the low growl of an engine at the mouth of the alley. A black SUV slides into view, blocking the only clear way out. Not corporate security, no logos, no uniforms, just tinted windows, engine idling like it's been waiting for him. Kane's hand drifts toward the small pistol under his coveralls, but before he can decide whether to run or fight, the passenger window rolls down halfway. A gloved hand tosses something out onto the wet pavement, a small burner phone that lands with a sharp clack at Kane's feet. It buzzes once. Kane hesitates, then picks it up and presses it to his ear. The voice on the other end is distorted, genderless, calm in a way that feels more dangerous than a gun. You're looking in the wrong place, Rourke. Orion is just a mask. Keep chasing them, and you'll end up like Jenna. Before Kane can answer, the line goes dead. The SUV backs out of the alley and disappears into traffic like it was never there. Later, in a safe place, far from the glass towers and security cameras, Kane sits alone with his laptop, the room lit only by the cold glow of the screen. On one side of the display, Jenna's recovered fragment of code. On the other, the routing logs he pulled from Orion's servers. He lines them up, piece by piece, the way he used to line up targets through a scope. The pattern emerges slowly at first, then all at once. The satellite traffic doesn't start inside Orion, it only passes through. Buried deep in the logs is a source address, hidden behind layers of rerouting and encryption, an origin point tagged with a familiar label. Aegis Core, internal access. Whoever hijacked the satellites did it from inside the same system Kane once trusted with his life. He digs deeper, pulling up old encrypted records he was never meant to see again. There it is, an operator ID tied to the Aegis access point, a string of numbers and letters he hasn't seen in years, except in his nightmares. It's the same ID that appeared in the after-action files for Caracas, the mission where his entire team died and his own death was neatly typed into a report. For a moment, the room around him blurs. He sees the blast again, the road in Caracas turning into fire, his team's vehicle flipping end over end. He remembers the crackle of the radio, the sudden silence, the way the official story never quite matched what he saw with his own eyes. Back then, he thought it was just another bad op, bad intel, bad luck. Now, looking at the matching ID, he knows better. Someone inside Aegis has been pulling strings for a long time. Kane closes his eyes, then forces himself back to the present. Jenna found the same trail and died for it. Orion Dynamics is a convenient villain, but the real rot is closer to home, inside the very division that dragged him out of the grave. He snaps the laptop shut and pockets the USB drives. If the threat is inside Aegis, then walking back into their world might be the only way to reach it. But this time, he tells himself he's not going in as their weapon. He's going in as their problem.
Kane doesn't walk straight back into Aegis headquarters. If there's a traitor inside, announcing himself at the front desk would be suicide. Instead, he arranges a meeting on neutral ground, a half-abandoned office building in Midtown. Its rooftop high enough to see the city lights and low enough not to attract attention. The kind of place where conversations can happen off the record or disappear without a trace. Night has settled by the time he steps out onto the roof. The wind whips around the AC units and rested vents. The city hums below, unaware of how close it's already come to catastrophe. Kane stands near the edge, one hand in his jacket pocket, fingers brushing the USB drive like a worry stone. He's not sure if Helen Ward will actually come. He's even less sure what he'll do if she does. He doesn't see her first. He hears the helicopter. Low, heavy rotor blades thumping closer, chopping up the night air. A spotlight sweeps across the rooftop, blinding him for a second. When his eyes adjust, he sees them. Black-clad tactical officers fanning out from the stairwell door, rifles up, visors down. A disembodied voice calls out through a megaphone, echoing off the concrete.
Kane Rourke, this is Aegis Division Tactical Response. You are under arrest for unauthorized access to classified systems, treason, and acts of cyber terrorism against the United States. The words hit like bullets. Treason? Cyber terrorism? They've already written the story, and he's the villain. Kane raises his hand slowly, eyes scanning the sky. On a nearby rooftop, the helicopter hovers, its open side door framing silhouettes. Snipers, maybe, or observers ready to record his every move. Through the roar of the rotors, a calm female voice cuts in over his earpiece. He doesn't remember putting it in, doesn't remember when it activated, but he knows that voice. Helen Ward. She says, "Stand down, Rourke, walk toward the officers, and we can fix this. Run, and I can't protect you anymore." For a second, Kane almost laughs. Protect him? Somewhere inside Aegis, someone used their own core systems to hijack military satellites, killed his team in Caracas, killed Jenna on a bridge, and now they're hanging the whole mess around his neck like a noose. If this is Helen's idea of protection, he doesn't want it. He takes one slow step back instead of forward. That's all it takes. The rooftop erupts, shouted commands, boots pounding on gravel, the helicopter spotlight snapping to track him as he pivots and bolts behind the nearest ventilation unit. Bullets chew into concrete where he stood a heartbeat ago, stone dust and sparks spraying past his shoulder. He doesn't fire back. He's not here to win a war against an entire tactical team. He's here to stay alive long enough to expose the people who sent them. The chase turns into a desperate dance across the rooftop maze, air ducts, satellite dishes, and loose cables underfoot. He moves by instinct, cutting angles, dropping behind cover just before another burst of fire gun, leaping a gap onto the adjacent building with centimeters to spare. Behind him, radios crackle. Target moving east, rooftop level, requesting authorization for lethal force. From somewhere in his ear, Helen's voice snaps, negative on lethal. We need him alive. He wonders who "we" is and how long that order will actually hold. By the time he disappears down a fire escape and vanishes into the darkness between buildings, sirens are already rising from the streets. Within hours, his face will be on secure channels, maybe even on the news if they need a public enemy. Data will be found on his computers, logs will be fabricated, and the story will be simple. A dead soldier came back wrong and tried to burn down the sky. But he still has something they don't. The raw trace Jenna left behind, and the timeline of the next hit. In the dim hideout where he finally stops running, he spreads out every scrap of data he has on a battered table. There it is, buried in the noise, a scheduled maintenance window in the military satellite network, only a few hours away. A 30-minute gap where control will quietly shift to a backup system, routed once again through Orion Dynamics' hidden node. The first hijack lasted 30 seconds. The next one will have 30 minutes to do real damage. Outside, a storm is rolling in over Manhattan, thunder growling in the distance, wind clawing at the glass towers. Kane zips up his jacket and pockets the drives. If he wants to stop what's coming, he has to go back to the last place they expect to see him alive, the glass tower of Orion Dynamics, with a storm for cover and the whole world's sky on the line. The storm hits Manhattan like the sky finally decided to join the fight. Rain hammers the glass towers, lightning claws across the clouds, turning streets and windows into brief flashes of white. Through the downpour, a hooded figure crosses the plaza of Orion Dynamics, head down, face in shadow. Security is thinner tonight. The storm, the previous alarms, the chaos, they've stretched everyone thinner than they realize. That's exactly what Kane is counting on. He doesn't go anywhere near the front doors. Instead, he slips down a side ramp into the loading bay, where delivery trucks would normally back in under dry skies. Now water pools on the concrete, dripping from overhead beams in steady, rhythmic beats. A side door, marked Authorized Personnel Only, yields to a stolen key card and a little pressure. Inside, the building feels different from before. Emergency notices scroll on wall monitors. Some floors are locked down. Systems are in storm mode, running on backup power. Kane moves through the back corridors with purpose. He knows where he's going this time. The real target isn't the secondary server room he hit earlier. It's the main node buried deeper, the heart of the pipeline feeding the military satellite network. As he descends, the lights grow dimmer, shifting from corporate white to the amber glow of backup generators. The hum of machines grows louder, more focused, like he's walking toward the center of a storm inside the building to match the one outside. The main node chamber is bigger than he imagined, a circular room lined with towering server stacks, cables hanging like vines, cooling units roaring to keep the whole thing from cooking itself. And he's not the first one here. On an elevated platform near the central console, a small team works frantically, faces lit by cascading code on oversized screens. Among them, a man turns at the sound of Kane's footsteps, face bruised, arm in a sling, but very much alive. Lucas Mercer, the Orion security consultant who was supposed to have died in the last accident. Kane doesn't need to hear every word to understand the shape of the truth. Mercer isn't here to protect Orion. He's here to use it. On the main display, a countdown ticks toward 0, labeled as a scheduled maintenance window. Underneath it, a cascade of commands routes control away from the legitimate military channels and into something else. A hidden architecture marked with a name that chills Kane more than the rain ever could. Spectral Node. It's not just a hacker handle. It's a network, an invisible republic living inside the wires, using corporations like Orion as gloves on its hands. Kane knows he doesn't have the time or the manpower to dismantle it all tonight. But he doesn't need to. He just needs to break this one operation before the window fully opens. He moves fast, smashing a junction panel with a heavy wrench, severing a critical hardware bridge. Screens flicker, the countdown stutters. Rainwater forced in from damaged vents above drips onto exposed electronics, sending up tiny sparks. The node is still trying to push the hijack through, but now, so is he. The room becomes a war between code and physics. As spectral node scripts hammer at every remaining connection, Kane tears out cables and overloads emergency relays. Half the screens die, the other half scream error messages. Somewhere far above, a satellite momentarily loses guidance, drifts, then snaps back under the control of the proper system. The 30-minute hijack never launches. What was supposed to be a symphony of sabotage becomes a handful of discordant notes before the conductor's baton is snapped in two. In the chaos, Mercer disappears into the dark like smoke, another ghost slipping out before the lights come back on. By the time fire alarms trigger and sprinklers finally kick in, the main node is half drowned and half burned out. Kane doesn't wait around to be thanked or blamed. He's already gone, moving through backup stairwells and service shafts, vanishing into the storm-slashed night. Hours later, the story reaches the outside world in the safest way possible. A brief notice about electrical issues and a minor fire at Orion Dynamics. No injuries, no public outage, nothing to see. The near catastrophe is reduced to 3 lines of corporate PR. In a quiet corner of the city, far from the lights and the sirens, Kane stands under the overhang of an old brick building, watching the rain ease into a steady drizzle. His phone buzzes with a block number. He already knows who it is before he answers. Helen Ward doesn't waste time on small talk. She tells him Aegis has already been briefed. Some in the division believe he caused the incident. Some believe he stopped it. And somewhere in the middle of those competing narratives, a private file has been opened with a single new word on it: spectral node. She doesn't deny that someone inside Aegis used their systems for Caracas, or that someone used them again for the satellite hijacks. She only says this: there are people inside our walls who think they can play God with the sky, and others outside who are happy to sell them the thunder. She offers him something that feels less like a deal and more like a dare. Come back in, Rourke. Not as an asset, but as a hunter. You want the truth about what happened to your team, to Jenna? You won't find it living like a ghost in Brooklyn. Kane listens without saying a word, watching a drop of water roll down the cracked screen of a neon sign across the street. He could walk away. He could disappear again, change his name, let the next storm hit someone else's sky. But that's not who he is. It never was. He hangs up without answering yes or no. Instead, he looks up at the thinning clouds, where satellites still circle like distant, indifferent eyes. In his pocket, the USB drives feel heavier than ever. The world thinks Kane Rourke is dead. Aegis marked him as a casualty. Spectral Node tried to turn him into a scapegoat. From now on, he decides, they can all be half right. Because the man he used to be is gone. But something far more dangerous just took his place.
You're listening to Midnight Action Stories, thrilling crime tales after dark. If you enjoy these late-night missions, don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell, and drop your questions or theories in the comments below.